The unexpected happened. A horse entered the hospital, saved its owner, and moved everyone. The automatic doors of Royal Brisbane Hospital slid open at 3:15 in the morning, and what walked through them made security officer David Chun nearly drop his coffee. A white mare, her coat gleaming under the fluorescent lights, stepped calmly into the emergency department as if she had every right to be there. Her hooves clicked against the polished floor with deliberate purpose, and her dark, intelligent eyes scanned the corridors with unmistakable determination. "Bloody hell," David muttered, his hand frozen halfway to his radio. There's a horse in the hospital." The mare was Luna, a 12-year-old Arabian who traveled 23 kilometers through Brisbane's suburbs to reach this place. She'd left her paddock in Samford Valley hours earlier, jumping a fence she'd never attempted before, navigating roads and intersections with inexplicable certainty. Because 3 floors above, in the intensive care unit, her owner Sarah Mitchell lay in a coma, and Luna had felt the moment Sarah's heartbeat began to falter, felt it like her own heart was breaking. Sarah had rescued Luna 8 years ago from a property where the mare had been starved and neglected. The horse had been skeletal, terrified of humans, covered in old whip scars. Sarah, a veterinary nurse with infinite patience, had spent 6 months earning Luna's trust. She'd sit in the paddock for hours, reading aloud, never pushing, never forcing. Slowly, Luna had begun to approach, first just to sniff Sarah's hand, then to rest her muzzle on Sarah's shoulder, and finally to follow her around like a devoted shadow. Their bond had become something extraordinary. Luna could sense Sarah's moods before Sarah herself recognized them. When Sarah had gone through a difficult divorce, Luna had stood quietly beside her as she cried, pressing her warm body against Sarah's in silent comfort. When Sarah had been promoted at the veterinary clinic and came home celebrating, Luna had pranced around the paddock with matching joy. They communicated in ways that transcended words, a look, a touch, a shared understanding that ran bone deep. 4 days ago, Sarah had been in a car accident on the Gateway motorway. A truck had jackknifed in heavy rain, and Sarah's sedan had been caught in the resulting pileup. Traumatic brain injury, fractured ribs, punctured lung. The surgery had been touch and go, but Sarah had survived. Barely. She'd been in a coma ever since, her brain too swollen, her body too damaged. The doctors had prepared her family for the worst. Luna had been at the stables when Tom Bradley, the property manager, received the call about Sarah's accident. He'd had to tell the mare, feeling foolish even as he did it, explaining that Sarah was hurt, that she was in hospital, that she couldn't come home yet. Luna had stood absolutely still as he spoke, her ears forward, processing every word. Then she'd walked to the corner of her paddock and hadn't moved for hours, staring toward Brisbane as if she could see through the distance to where Sarah lay fighting for her life. For 3 days, Luna barely ate. She paced the fence line, calling out with desperate whinnies that made the other horses nervous. Tom tried everything: extra feed, gentle handling, even bringing Luna's favorite treats. Nothing worked. The mare was grieving, and Tom could see her losing weight, her eyes growing dull with despair. Then on the 4th night, something shifted. Tom had checked the paddocks at midnight, all horses accounted for, Luna standing quietly in the corner. When he checked again at dawn, Luna was gone. The fence rail she'd jumped was still trembling from the impact, and her hoofprints led toward the road that headed into the city. Tom immediately rang the police, the RSPCA, every contact he had. A loose horse on Brisbane roads was dangerous for everyone. But as the morning wore on, reports started coming in: a white mare trotting calmly down Samford Road, waiting at pedestrian lights, moving with such purpose that drivers instinctively gave her space. Traffic cameras captured her journey, and social media exploded with sightings. Nobody could catch her. She moved too deliberately, too quickly, always staying just ahead of anyone who tried to approach. Now, in the hospital, Luna walked past the frozen security officer, past the nurse at triage who'd gone pale, past the cleaner who stood with her mop raised like a weapon. The mare moved with absolute certainty, her tail swishing once as she turned toward the lifts. She stopped in front of them and pawed the ground 3 times with her right hoof, a gesture Sarah had taught her years ago to indicate yes when asked questions. Dr. James Cooper, finishing a brutal overnight shift, stood nearby with a meat pie from the vending machine. He watched the mare's behavior with exhausted fascination. The logical part of his brain, the part trained in evidence-based medicine, insisted this couldn't be happening. But there was a horse in his hospital, and she was clearly trying to use the lift. "This is insane," he said aloud. "I'm either having a breakdown or I really need to sleep." Luna turned her head to look at him. Her eyes were luminous, urgent, and somehow full of desperate pleading. Without fully understanding why, Dr. Cooper moved forward and pressed the lift button. The door slid open with a mechanical ding. Luna stepped into the lift as if she'd done it countless times before. Dr. Cooper followed, his exhausted brain unable to process the surreality of sharing a lift with a horse at 3 a.m. The doors closed, sealing them in the small space together. Luna's breathing was calm, steady, but her body vibrated with tension, not fear, but focused determination. "You're looking for someone, aren't you?" "Dr." Cooper said quietly, more to himself than the mare. "Someone in this hospital." Luna's ear flicked back toward him, acknowledging his words. She pawed the ground again 3 times. 3, 3rd floor. "The, CU?" Dr. Cooper's hand trembled slightly as he pressed the button for level 3. His medical mind raced through possibilities. He'd heard stories of therapy animals, of emotional support dogs, even of a cat in a nursing home that could somehow sense when patients were about to die. But this was different. This was a horse who'd apparently navigated suburban Brisbane alone to reach this specific hospital. The lift hummed upward. Luna stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the digital floor display as if she understood what the numbers meant. "Doctor." Cooper noticed details he'd missed in his initial shock. The mare's coat was damp with sweat from her journey. There were minor scratches on her legs from pushing through bush or fences, but her eyes were bright with intelligence and purpose. This wasn't a panicked animal. This was someone on a mission. The lift dinged. 3rd floor. The doors opened to reveal the ICU corridor, dimly lit for the night shift. Nurse Jennifer Walsh sat at the station, updating charts. She looked up at the sound of the lift, and her jaw literally dropped. Her pen clattered onto the desk. "Don't scream, Doctor," Cooper said quickly, stepping out with his hands raised. "I know how this looks, but just don't panic. I think she's looking for someone." Luna didn't wait for permission. She walked straight past the nurse's station, her hooves clicking loudly in the quiet corridor. Every instinct told her where to go. She could smell antiseptic, bleach, illness, fear, but underneath it all, faint but unmistakable, was Sarah's scent. The smell of coconut shampoo Sarah always used, the lavender lotion she put on her hands after scrubbing for surgery, the essence that was uniquely, impossibly hers. "Stop." Jennifer called out, but her voice lacked authority. She was too shocked to be forceful. "Wait, which room is she going to?" Luna stopped in front of room 312. She stood there, her nose nearly touching the door, her entire body trembling now. Behind that door was Sarah. She knew it with absolute certainty. "Doctor." Cooper caught up to her, breathing hard. "Room 312, he said, checking the door's nameplate. "That's Sarah Mitchell. 34, coma patient, post-traumatic brain injury from a vehicle accident 4 days ago. Her condition deteriorated overnight. We've been monitoring for increased intracranial pressure." Jennifer had followed them, her radio in hand. "Security's on the way. Should I call them off?" "Wait, Doctor," Cooper said, something clicking in his mind. "Sarah Mitchell. Isn't she the veterinary nurse from the Brookfield Clinic?" "I remember the case notes mentioned she worked with animals." "Yeah," Jennifer confirmed. "Her partner's been here every day, Tom something. He mentioned she had horses." Luna pushed against the door with her muzzle. The handle gave way, and the door swung open. The room beyond was dim, lit only by the glow of monitors and the small lamp above the bed. Sarah lay motionless on the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting her to various machines. Her face was pale, almost gray, and a ventilator breathed for her with mechanical precision. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the space, but the rhythm was wrong, too slow, irregular, weakening. The mare froze in the doorway, and a sound came from her throat, a low, keening whine that made every hair on Dr. Cooper's neck stand up. It was grief, pure and raw, vocalized in a way that transcended species. Luna took 2 hesitant steps into the room, her hooves suddenly uncertain, as if afraid of what she'd find. "Jesus," Jennifer whispered behind them. "She knows." She actually knows. Luna approached the bed slowly. Her nose extended toward Sarah's face, nostrils flaring as she took in her scent. Then, with infinite gentleness, she lowered her head and rested her muzzle against Sarah's cheek. The mare's warm breath stirred Sarah's hair. Luna closed her eyes and simply stood there, breathing in rhythm with the ventilator, as if she could will Sarah to breathe on her own. Dr. Cooper watched the heart monitor. Sarah's heart rate had been dropping steadily for the past hour. They'd been preparing to call her family in, suspecting she might not make it through the night. But as Luna touched her, something changed. The rhythm steadied slightly. Still weak, still irregular, but no longer declining. "That's impossible," he muttered, but the evidence was right there on the screen. Luna began making soft sounds, low, nickering noises mixed with gentle wuffles. She nudged Sarah's cheek carefully, mindful of the tubes and wires. Then she did something that made both medical professionals gasp. She started grooming Sarah, her lips gently pulling at Sarah's hair the way horses groom each other. The ultimate gesture of affection and bonding in equine communication. "We should stop this," Jennifer said, but her voice lacked conviction. "This isn't sterile protocol, it's not—" "Look at the monitors, Doctor," Cooper interrupted. "Her heart rate's stabilizing. Blood pressure's coming up. These are improvements." More staff had gathered in the doorway, now other nurses. A resident, even David Chun from security, though he'd left his radio silent. Everyone watched in stunned silence as the white mare continued her vigil beside the comatose woman, grooming her with exquisite gentleness, nickering soft encouragements, her presence somehow commanding and peaceful all at once. Luna shifted position, carefully placing her head on the bed beside Sarah's shoulder, the way she used to lie in the paddock when Sarah sat reading. The heart monitor's beeping grew stronger, more regular. Sarah's fingers twitched just slightly, but definitely moved. "Did you see that?" Jennifer whispered urgently. "Her fingers moved, Dr. Cooper. Her fingers definitely moved." Dr. Cooper stepped closer to the bed, his professional training overriding his shock. He checked Sarah's pupils with his penlight, noted her respiratory rate, studied the monitors with intense focus. Everything was improving, marginally, but measurably. Heart rate stabilizing at 72 beats per minute. Blood pressure rising from dangerously low to merely concerning. Even her oxygen saturation had ticked up 2 percentage points. "This doesn't make medical sense," he said quietly. "But it's happening." Luna continued her gentle ministrations, her warm breath steady against Sarah's face. The mare's eyes were half closed, her entire being focused on this moment, this connection. She nickered again, a sound both questioning and encouraging, as if asking Sarah to come back, to wake up, to return from wherever the coma had taken her. Tom Bradley arrived 20 minutes later, having driven at breakneck speed from Sanford Valley after police informed him Luna had been spotted entering the hospital. He burst onto the ICU floor, wild-eyed and breathless, expecting chaos and disaster. Instead, he found a circle of medical staff standing silently outside room 312, watching something through the window with expressions ranging from awe to disbelief. "Where is she?" "Is she okay?" Tom demanded. "Did she hurt anyone?" "See for yourself, Doctor," Cooper said quietly, stepping aside to let Tom view through the window. Tom looked into the room and felt his knees go weak. Luna stood beside Sarah's bed, her head resting gently near Sarah's shoulder, her presence somehow both impossible and absolutely right. He'd cared for horses for 30 years, had seen countless examples of their intelligence and emotional depth, but this transcended anything in his experience. "How long has she been in there?" Tom asked, his voice cracking. "About 40 minutes, Jennifer answered. "And MR. "Bradley, I don't know how to explain this, but Sarah's vitals have been improving since Luna arrived. Her heart rate stabilized, blood pressure's coming up. She's even shown some small motor responses in her fingers." Tom wiped his eyes roughly. "Can I go in?" "Slowly, Doctor," Cooper cautioned. The mare's calm now, but she's also clearly protective. We don't want to startle her or disrupt whatever's happening here. Tom entered the room with the careful movements of someone approaching a wild animal. But Luna knew him. She'd known him for years. She lifted her head briefly, acknowledged him with a soft nicker, then returned her attention to Sarah. Tom moved to the opposite side of the bed, his hand finding Sarah's, mindful of the foreline. "You found her, girl," Tom said softly to Luna, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Bloody hell, you actually found her." "I don't know how, but you did." Luna's ear swiveled toward him, listening, but she didn't move from her position. Her focus remained absolute. Tom had seen mares guard their newborn foals with the same intensity, the same unwavering dedication. But Sarah wasn't Luna's offspring. She was something perhaps even more profound. She was Luna's chosen family, the person who'd saved her life and given her reason to trust again. "Sarah," Tom said, squeezing her hand gently, "your girl's here. Luna came all the way from home to find you. That's how much you're loved, sweetheart. That's how important you are. You need to fight. You need to come back to us." The heart monitor's rhythm grew stronger. Sarah's eyelids fluttered, just barely, but enough that everyone in the room held their breath. Luna nickered urgently, lifting her head to look directly at Sarah's face. She waffled softly, her breath stirring Sarah's hair, and then did something remarkable. She began making the sound she'd always made when calling Sarah in from the paddock, a distinctive, rising whinny that Sarah had trained herself to recognize immediately. The sound that meant, "Come here, I need you." Sarah's eyes moved beneath her closed lids. Rapid eye movement, a sign of brain activity, of consciousness trying to surface. "DR." Cooper moved quickly to the bedside, checking readings, adjusting monitors, his hands steady despite his racing heart. "This is extraordinary," he murmured. "I've never seen anything like this. Her brain activity is increasing significantly." Luna called again, that distinctive whinny echoing through the small room. The other horses at the stables had always found it amusing. Luna had a unique voice, and she used it specifically for Sarah. It was their private communication, the sound that transcended the barrier between species. And Sarah heard it. Somewhere in the darkness of her coma, in the distant place where her consciousness had retreated, she heard Luna calling her. The sound pulled at her like a rope, like a lifeline thrown into churning water. She could feel warmth against her face, could smell the familiar scent of horse hay and earth and the subtle sweetness of Luna's particular smell. Her mind, which had been floating in gray nothingness, began reaching toward that warmth, toward that voice. Luna persisted, calling again and again, each whinny more urgent. Her body trembled with the effort, with the desperate need to bring Sarah back. Tom watched, transfixed, as decades of working with horses coalesced into this single moment of understanding. Animals loved, animals grieved, animals fought for their people just as fiercely as any human ever could. "Come on, Sarah," Tom whispered. "Follow her voice. Luna's calling you home." Sarah's hand twitched under his. Then her fingers curled slightly, grasping weakly at his palm. The monitors erupted in a cascade of changing numbers, heart rate climbing to healthy levels, blood pressure normalizing, oxygen saturation reaching optimal ranges. Her breathing pattern changed, fighting against the ventilator's rhythm, trying to breathe on her own. Dr. Cooper called for the respiratory team. Within minutes, the room filled with purposeful activity doctors and nurses working with practiced efficiency, assessing Sarah's ability to breathe independently, making rapid decisions about reducing ventilator support. Through it all, Luna remained at the bedside, her presence a calm anchor in the controlled chaos, her eyes never leaving Sarah's face. "She's breathing over the vent," one of the respiratory therapists reported. "Strong effort, good tidal volume. Dr. Cooper, I think we can extubate." "Do it, Doctor," Cooper ordered. "But carefully. She's still not fully conscious." The process took 15 minutes, removing the breathing tube, suctioning airways, monitoring carefully for any sign of respiratory distress. Sarah's first breath on her own was ragged, uncertain. Her second was stronger. Luna nickered softly, encouragingly, and Sarah's third breath came easier still. The mare lowered her head again, pressing her muzzle gently against Sarah's cheek, making those soft grooming sounds that had always meant safety, love, home. "Sarah?" Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. "Can you hear me, love? You're in hospital. You've been in an accident. But you're okay now. You're going to be okay." Sarah's eyelids fluttered again, more deliberately this time. The effort seemed enormous, like she was lifting impossible weight. But slowly, incrementally, her eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, confused, struggling to make sense of the bright lights and unfamiliar surroundings. Then her gaze found Luna's face, mere inches from her own, and something clicked into place. "Luna," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, raw from the breathing tube. Her hand lifted weakly, trembling with effort, reaching for the mare's face. "You came," Luna pressed into Sarah's touch, making a sound that was part whinny, part sob if horses could sob. The mare's whole body shuddered with relief, with joy, with the overwhelming emotion of having found what she'd been desperately seeking. Tom couldn't stop his own tears, and neither could several of the nurses watching from the doorway. "She found you," Tom managed to say. "Jumped the fence, traveled 23 kilometers through Brisbane, walked right into this hospital like she owned the place. Took the bloody lift to the 3rd floor and came straight to your room. Nobody could stop her, Sarah. Nobody could even slow her down." Sarah's eyes filled with tears that spilled down her temples. Her hand remained on Luna's face, fingers weakly stroking the soft muzzle. "Good girl," she whispered. "My good, brave girl, Doctor." Cooper cleared his throat, professional composure barely maintained. "Miss Mitchell and Dr. Cooper, you've been in a serious accident. You've had surgery for traumatic brain injury, and you've been in a coma for 4 days. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Sarah's eyes moved to him slowly, processing. She nodded fractionally. "Hurts," she whispered. "Everything hurts." "That's to be expected. You've got broken ribs, a punctured lung that's healing, and you underwent brain surgery. The fact that you're conscious right now is ... it's remarkable." Sarah's gaze returned to Luna, and a tiny smile touched her lips despite the pain. "She did this, didn't she? She brought me back, Doctor." Cooper exchanged glances with Jennifer, with the other staff members. Medical science demanded skepticism, required evidence-based explanations. But everyone in that room had witnessed something that transcended their understanding: the inexplicable bond between human and animal, the power of love to reach through darkness, the mysterious ways that consciousness could be called back from the edge. "I believe she did," Dr. Cooper said quietly. "Your vitals began improving the moment she touched you. We were preparing to call your family, expecting the worst. Then your horse arrived and everything changed." Over the next hour, more medical staff came to assess Sarah, neurologists checking her responses, nurses documenting her awakening, specialists reviewing her scans and comparing them to pre-coma baselines. Through it all, Luna remained at the bedside. Hospital protocol had gone out the window. Nobody had the heart or the courage to try removing the mare who'd achieved what medicine couldn't. Sarah's parents arrived at dawn, having driven through the night from Toowoomba after Tom called them. They burst into the ICU expecting to say goodbye to their daughter, and instead found her awake, talking in whispers, her hand resting on a white horse's face. Her mother, Patricia, stopped in the doorway and simply wept. Her father, Graham, approached the bed slowly, his weathered farmer's face working through emotions he couldn't name. "Dad," Sarah said weakly, managing a small smile. "Meet Luna. Properly, she came to get me." Graham had worked with horses his entire life, had bred and trained them, had seen their intelligence and their capacity for attachment. But this defied even his extensive experience. He reached out and stroked Luna's neck with the reverence of someone touching something sacred. "She's 1 in a million, your girl," he said hoarsely, "bloody magnificent." The story spread through the hospital like wildfire. Staff from other departments found excuses to walk past room 312, wanting to glimpse the horse who'd saved her owner. Social media exploded with photos and videos taken by witnesses to Luna's journey. News crews arrived, requesting interviews. The hospital's public relations department worked overtime managing the media attention. Dr. Sarah Chun, the hospital's chief of neurology, came to examine Sarah personally. After a thorough assessment, she stood at the bedside with an expression of professional bafflement mixed with genuine awe. "Your brain scans show remarkable improvement," she told Sarah. "The swelling has reduced significantly, faster than we'd typically expect. Your motor responses are strong, cognitive function appears intact. And your recovery trajectory is unprecedented. I'll be honest, Miss Mitchell, we were not optimistic about your prognosis. What's happened here is medically extraordinary." "It's Luna," Sarah said simply, her voice growing stronger with each passing hour. "She wouldn't let me go." Dr. Chun looked at the white mare standing calmly beside the bed, then back at Sarah. "There are things in medicine we can't explain with current science. The connection between human and animal, the power of emotional bonds to influence physiological healing, we're only beginning to understand these relationships. Your case will be studied, documented, but more importantly, you're alive and recovering when you shouldn't be. That's what matters." Tom made arrangements to transport Luna back to Sanford Valley late that afternoon. The mare was exhausted, dehydrated, and needed proper care. But getting her to leave Sarah proved challenging. Every time someone tried to lead her away, Luna would plant her hooves and refuse to move, her eyes locked on Sarah with obvious distress. Finally, Sarah spoke to her. "Luna, it's okay. I need you to go home now. Go with Tom, eat, rest, take care of yourself. I'll come back to you, I promise." "I'll come home." Luna's ears swiveled forward, listening intently. Sarah reached up the effort, clearly painful, and touched the distinctive white blaze on Luna's face. "I promise, girl. I'm not leaving you. I'll never leave you. But you need to go now." The mare stood motionless for a long moment, then lowered her head and gently touched her nose to Sarah's forehead, a gesture of trust, of acceptance, of goodbye. Tom led her from the room, and this time Luna went willingly, though she looked back 3 times before disappearing down the corridor. Sarah's recovery progressed rapidly over the following weeks. The brain swelling subsided, her broken ribs healed, her lung function returned to normal. She underwent intensive physiotherapy, pushing herself harder than her therapist recommended, driven by her determination to return to Luna. Every video call Tom arranged between Sarah and the mare left both woman and horse visibly emotional. Luna would press her nose to the phone screen and make soft, nickering sounds while Sarah talked to her. 3 months after the accident, Sarah was discharged. Tom brought Luna to collect her from the hospital in a custom-fitted horse float that allowed Sarah to ride inside with the mare. When Luna saw Sarah walking out the hospital doors slowly, with a cane, but walking the mare's whinny could be heard across the entire car park. They stood together in the sunshine, Sarah's arms around Luna's neck, both of them trembling with emotion. Tom watched from a distance, giving them their moment. Other patients and staff had gathered at windows, watching the reunion, many wiping tears from their eyes. "Thank you," Sarah whispered into Luna's mane. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for not giving up." Luna's response was to groom Sarah's hair gently, the same way she'd done in the hospital room, the ultimate expression of equine love and bonding. They stayed that way for long minutes, 2 beings who'd chosen each other, who'd saved each other in different ways, whose connection transcended explanation or understanding. The story of Luna's hospital visit became legendary in Brisbane. It was featured in medical journals, discussed in veterinary conferences, shared millions of times online. But for Sarah and Luna, it was simply what love looked like: fierce, determined, crossing impossible distances, refusing to accept loss. They'd been given a second chance, and neither of them would ever take it for granted again.